What's up, Exiles? It's Hegemony, and today I wanted to share my crit Ice Trapper as the Saboteur. My Lacerator died from Calria the Risen with Detonate Dead, and that death motivated me to try something new like Ice Trap. The skill has been in the game for a long time, but I've never used it. And the way Ice Trap works is that it has an AoE that does a significant upfront payload. Unlike my other trappers, this will focus on the quantity of traps thrown using Cluster Traps, Support Gem. The basic idea of this is that you use high amounts of increased area of effect so that you can achieve AoE overlap. With a Cluster Trap Support Gem, you'll throw 4 traps in a small area. And with a respectable amount of AoE, you'll be able to hit the same target 4 times. And that leads me into the discussion of why we use the Saboteur Ascendancy. The first 2 points I picked up was Bomb Specialist. I leveled up with Fire Trap, Lightning Trap, and Flame Totem. What's really cool about Bomb Specialist is that you have a 10% chance for traps to trigger an additional time. Moving along, we get the main notable that makes the build really shine, which is Chain Reaction. 20% increased trap damage, 40% increased cooldown recovery speed for throwing traps. This is really huge if you want to focus on primarily throwing one trap. Then you have 10% increased area of effect radius for traps, which is insane. And then the big ticket right here is when your traps trigger, your nearby traps also trigger. So this means if a monster walks into one of the 4 cluster ice traps that you have set up, the others will detonate. And with a lot of increased AoE, it'll most likely get hit by the other 3 traps. I really don't recommend playing Ice Trap as a non-saboteur, and if you're determined to do so, I recommend you use the unique belt called the Sunblast Cloth Belt. It reduces trap duration by 80%, and then the kicker is traps trigger at the end of their duration. And while it won't be instant, it'll be pretty decent. Remember, do not use this belt if you're playing as a Saboteur. So going on into Merciless, I picked up Explosives Expert. This gives me 10% Ellie Pen, and 10% reduced damage taken from traps and mines. 10% Ellie Pen is extremely damn powerful. Our last 2 points from the Uber Lab is called Blinding Assault. It grants 25% chance to create a smoke cloud when hit, 25% chance to blind enemies on hit, and then cannot be blinded. The cannot be blinded only has an interaction with my Whirling Blades and Fortify. Other than that, I don't have any other attacks. Blind is a debuff that lessens the chance to hit of the affected target by 50%. Note that this will have no effect on monsters with Resolute Technique, such as Duresto. I'll explain how we reliably apply the blind later in this video. But first, let's take a look at the uniques that are used and how they interact with this character. My main motivation was to use a new unique that was released, and a skill that I've never played before. So looking at the wiki, I saw that Ice Trap had a high mana cost, and on a 5 link at level 20, it costs exactly 100 mana. And on a 6 link, it costs 119 mana at level 19. And so this seemed perfect for Kitavas because it says 30% chance to cast socketed spells when you spend at least 100 mana to use a skill. It also has 30% reduced cast speed. Well, trappers don't give a shit about cast speed. So the downside on this helm is not really a downside. It does give me a decent amount of mana. In addition, it also gives me a little bit of ES to go with my hybrid defense. So what could I possibly put in this Kitavas that would enhance my Ice Trapper? And I've concluded that Frost Bomb, Ellie Weak, Power Charge on Crit, and Blade Vortex were my choices. It's important to note that when these spells are cast, they go off near your character. They don't auto-target onto an enemy. The Blade Vortex Power Charge on Crit combo is quite powerful for this character. It allows me to generate power charges, and it also allows me to apply the blind as I'm whirling through packs or face tanking the boss. So what's really nice about Blade Vortex is that when it triggers, it follows with my character. So I might throw a trap and it goes off, but no enemy monsters are nearby. I can take it to the next pack. And now we have Frost Bomb, which has similar interactions like Blade Vortex, only this is more like lay an egg and it'll detonate in its spot. Frost Bomb will not follow me around. Frost Bomb also has a 6% crit chance and a high damage effectiveness. This 130% also allows me to shock monsters that are hit by it. So while my Frost Bomb is ticking, it has a chance of giving me power charges. It'll reduce enemy monsters' life regeneration rate by 75%, and it will debuff enemy cold resistance by 20%, and that debuff will last for 2 seconds. It is worth mentioning that Frost Bomb and Blade Vortex will reflect back to the character because it's not in a trap. From my experience, I've been able to run LE Weakness and Fizz Reflect with no problems at all. My Blade Vortex is low anyways because I didn't have enough dex to max it out. These two skills aren't even loaded with penetration gems, and they take no additional penetration benefit from High Explosives or Explosives Expert. And while this is a very powerful and automated tool, you need to be very careful with Lightning Thorns both from Shavron and the Promenade boss. And the last spell in the helmet is Elemental Weakness. I chose LE Weak over Frostbite because it further reduces enemy monster resist to fire and lightning. Fire res is important because I'm using Fire Trap, Concentrated Effect, Fire Penetration, and Trap and Mine damage. These are all more multipliers that provide an insane amount of single target damage. And you're probably wondering, why are you even using Fire Trap? And that's because it provides me an option in combat. With crit chance, that's my chance to ignite, and with all these more multipliers, it puts up a significant dot, which then follows an enemy monster. With 100% damage effectiveness, my Fire Trap has 561 to 4619 lightning damage. That, combined with LE Weak and Penetration, will definitely shock a boss. And with my current trap cooldown recovery, I just don't have enough ice traps to throw them indefinitely, and that's not because I run out of mana, it's because I run out of traps to throw. If you had the helmet enchant that further reduces the ice trap cooldown recovery, then I'd imagine you could drop Fire Trap, although personally I probably still wouldn't. Another thing that's awesome about Fire Trap is that in 60% reduced regen maps, if you were to continually throw ice traps, you will eventually go This allows you to alternate between the two and have plenty of mana to actively throw traps and not go out of mana. Now let's talk about the skill tree and the notables, and then we'll talk about the gear. All this LE damage in the Shadow start allows me to push all different types of traps and status ailments. Elemental Focus is great because it gives me 10% chance to avoid ailments and increases the duration. And at the Saboteur notable, we have 30% increased trap damage and can have one additional trap placed at a time. This one additional trap will also be seen as a corrupted implicit on a belt. And this doesn't really enhance the build. It more or less allows you to preset traps. Let's say you're opening a strong box and you want to kill everything as you open it. But that can also be a bad thing if you don't have good crit chance and you open a box of porcupines in a ripping map. Hasty Reconstruction and this trap damage cooldown recovery provide a total of 30%. And in my opinion, no matter what ascendancy you chose for your Ice Trapper, I feel like this is mandatory. On the east side of the tree, we have Clever Construction. This means that your traps cannot be damaged for 5 seconds after being thrown. Traps have 1 HP, so they're pretty squishy, and anything like Leap Slam, Cyclone, and Burning Ground can be quite the nuisance without Clever Construction. Here we have High Explosives. Trap trigger radius extended by 10%, and then the best part is that we have 10% Tri-Elemental Penetration. And before we leave the Shadow, let's take a look at Coordination. 12% increased attack speed, 6% cast speed, 10% dex, and int. Attack speed is going to be very critical late game when you decide to use Whirling Blades as your movement skill. I found this to be when I swap over to Restless Ward with the Dodri's Elixir. Dexterity is going to be kind of hard for this character to get, so you'll need to get it somewhere on your gear. And in my case, I have 37 dex on my dagger. You will need at least 120 dex if you plan on using the Series step. Moving along to the Witch, we start to get some of the mana goodies that you're going to need to support this. Deep Wisdom is 20 int, 20 mana, 20 max ES. This Heart and Soul mana and life hybrid cluster is necessary. Through the AoE nodes, then we pick up Deep Thoughts. This gives us 20% max mana, 20% mana regen, and 20 int. And now we have our only keystone of the build, which is Elemental Overload. And while leveling, I skipped this keystone because I needed to get Kitavas up and running. And in order to get the Frost Bomb and the Blade Vortex running, my Ice Trap had to cost at least 100 mana. Now while you're leveling up a low level Ice Trap, it's hard to get Ice Trap to 100 mana. I stayed on Elrion Jewelry for quite some time, and then I ended up getting a Ghetto Corrupted 6 link so that I could push the 100 requirement. And once I hit the 100 mana mark for Kitavas, I got Elemental Overload. Now why would you get Elemental Overload as a crit Ice Trapper? Ice Trap has a very low crit chance of 5%, and with power charges it only has a 15.85% chance to crit. That is very low. And as you can see in the tree, I have very little to no investment into crit. In fact, the only crit node that I have is Trickery, which gives me 20%. So with Kitavas, I have Blade Vortex following my character. I also have Frost Bomb laying eggs and pulsing. These both have a 26% crit chance. So this is an automated way to keep my elemental overload buff up, which gives me a 40% more elemental damage multiplier. In addition, it means I don't have to invest into suffixes that consume crit and crit multiplier. And this is important because in order to support the high mana cost of Ice Trap, you're going to need to get mana regen on every piece of jewelry and maybe even your shield. And now you're probably wondering why I even go crit anyways. And the main reason is when you crit, you apply the elemental status element, whether that's freeze, shock, or ignite. And I have ways of pushing my crit chance with the perpetual diamond flask of warding. This allows me to get insane, reliable bursts of good crits. This flask says, your critical strike chance is lucky. And what this means is that your hits roll twice and determines whether or not it crits. So that's basically an explanation and justification of why we use elemental overload. Moving along in the Templar tree, we get the quick recovery wheel. This gives us life and mana regen and life regen per second. Our last bit of mana help that we get is Righteous Decree in the Templar area. These two nodes total up to 27% increased max mana and 9% reduced mana cost of skills. You need to micromanage your mana costs on your Ice Trap because these might deactivate your Kitava's ability to cast. Low level Ice Traps can push the mana cost under 100 in a 6-link. I found these two nodes to push my Ice Trap from 119 mana cost to 108. In addition, it added a significant amount of max mana and therefore increased my mana regen overall. As it stands right now, my base mana regen is 143.9. With a level 15 clarity, it goes to 202.9. And with Rallying Cry, it goes to 256.8. Now this is way overkill for anything that you would need in a standard map. But you have to push this kind of regen if you want the ability to run 60% reduced regen maps without having to use a mana potion. Now let's take a quick look on how I was able to achieve such high mana pools with high mana regen. On my gloves I have 54 mana. On this ring over here I have 59 mana and 42 mana regen. On my amulet I have 64 mana. I'm using a mana regen Power neck, which can go up to 30% mana regen on the implicit, and it happens to have 55 increased mana regen as the explicit. On this ring I have 60 mana and 41% mana regen. And lastly, on my shield I have 28 mana and 55 mana regen. And normally crit and crit multiplier show up as suffixes, so you can see why it's so stressful to gear for both crit and mana regen. And while we're here, let's go over some of the rares that I picked out and why they're significant. On the dagger, I would prioritize the number one stat to be the flat lightning damage added to spells. Because we're using such high damage effectiveness skills such as Ice Trap, Fire Trap, and Frost Bomb, it'll push your ability to shock bosses and scale damage. We've seen our lightning damage shoot up to the thousands with just the help of the dagger and Herald of Thunder. That's how important it is. The next important stat on your dagger will be spell damage, followed by attack speed. Yes, I said attack speed. The local attack speed will determine how fast you whirl and essentially is your movement speed and your ability to dodge shit. And with trappers, mobility is very, very important to dodge shit. After that, I would take mana regen, then spell crit, resist, and then dex. For your jewelry, the priority prefixes are life, mana, ES, and then evasion in that order. For suffixes, it's going to be mana regen, resist, and chaos resist. You could also get dex and all stats here if needed. The prefix priority order on shields would be life, ES, and then spell damage. And for suffixes, it's going to be mana regen, spell crit, block chance, and resist. For the priority prefixes on your gloves, I would pick life, mana, and then ES or EVES. For suffixes, you would just want resist, attack speed, or stats if you still need them. And lastly, on the belt, I would choose life, ES, open prefix, or armor. And the open prefix, I would craft movement speed with a divine orb and the Tor bench. And for suffixes, resist or flask enhancements. Let's take a quick look at my jewels. We have trap damage, life, freeze chance, and area damage. Now when I don't crit, I would still like to freeze because that keeps me safe against porcupines, detonate dead, and other things. On this jewel I have trap damage, life, and freeze chance. Moving along, we have attack speed with daggers, life, and freeze chance. And then last jewel, we have attack speed, and lots of resist. And this is to LAW cap me. Now that you know about the rares, let's talk about some of the other uniques that we haven't talked about. The Restless Ward, you guys have seen me use this chest time and time again, and that's because it's so cheap and so valuable. Now the combination of the Restless Ward and the Dotary's Elixir is very powerful because it allows me to generate all my charges. The downside of the 10% of your maximum life as chaos damage can be suppressed with good chaos resist and even fortify. And since I'm able to sustain all my charges, I use Rallying Cry because that boosts my mana regen and my damage. Prior to getting the Restless Ward and Dotary's combo, I was using Enduring Cry exclusively, and that was allowing me to generate a lot of endurance charges. This meant I went without frenzy charges, and that's okay. As you can see in my shield, I have both Enduring and Rallying Cry set up, and that's because Dotary's Elixir only allows me to get one endurance charge on use. And when I'm doing a vulnerability added monster damage map, I want to get those endurance charges up and ready. So I'll usually cast Enduring Cry first to get me up to my maximum endurance charges, and then I use Rallying Cry for the damage and mana regen. Flame Dash is used as a single link, and that's mainly to get through the obstacles that Whirling Blades cannot do. Rumi's Concoction is another added layer of defense that gives me 28% block chance and 11% spell block. These numbers can go up to 30 and 15 respectively. It also gives me 3000 armor. This character is very evasive because I have blind mechanics. I have 2700 evasion, which is roughly 23% at my level. And then we have Rumi's Concoction that blocks for me, my shield that has additional block, and then we have 16% spell dodge from the Series step. So when your avoidance fails, you still get the Rumi's Concoction armor. We run Arctic armor, which is physical and fire damage mitigation when I'm not moving or throwing a trap. We have 5 endurance charges, so that's 20% physical damage reduction. And we also have Whirling Blades, faster attacks with Fortify, which is another 20% damage reduction. And since we're using Arctic armor, we can use Whirling Blades to go through monsters, laying out chilled ground and essentially simulating temp chains without using your curse slot. And let's not forget our Ascendancy Tree. If I get hit, I have a 25% chance of dropping a smoke cloud, which gives a 100% chance to blind anything that's in the smoke cloud. And we also have the 25% chance to blind on hit, whether it's Ice Trap, Fire Trap, Blade Vortex, Frost Bomb, or even Whirling Blades. And for the last thing that I would like to talk about on this character are the lab enchants. When I did the Uber Lab, I managed to get 45 to 68 cold damage if you've been hit recently. Well, there are enough projectiles flying around and enough spells that this is up quite often. And we know with high damage effectiveness, these are really strong. I would prefer that was lightning damage, but I don't really feel like fishing for it. As for glove enchants, I would prefer Spite, but I ended up getting Commandment of Winter. And it turns out this glove enchant is quite good for this character. It's a bit more offensive, it does good AoE damage, it procs off of my Dotary's Elixir or whenever I get hit by anything. It does have a cooldown, but it does wreck even rare mobs. And as for Helmet enchant, I would prioritize Ice Trap Radius, then damage, and then cooldown recovery. I did quite a few lab runs with twice enchanted Prophecy, and I finally managed to get something that I actually use, which is increased Blade Vortex duration. This just increases my uptime, it allows me to apply the blind, get power charges, and proc overload. And to quickly go over the Bandit Rewards, you go Oak for the HP, Kraityn for the attack speed for Whirling Blades. You won't see many good returns early on, but late game, a fast Whirling Blades is going to be essential. And then for Merciless, if you're playing on Hardcore, I would recommend the Endurance Charge. If you're playing on Softcore, you can get the Frenzy Charge. If you would like to know more about the leveling and gear progression, don't forget to check the YouTube description below. That's it for the build. Sorry it was so long, and thank you guys for tuning in. If you guys enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I'm Hegemony, and I'll see you guys later.
Just need a moment to catch my breath.